Hello everybody, I'm Aaron Heselhurst. Welcome to the program. Of course, it's always great to have you with us. We'll talk about the currency dispute shortly, but first let's talk about Ireland and the bank bailout. Staggering numbers, 50 billion euros, that's $68 billion. That's what the Irish government could be forced to pay out in a worst case scenario to prop up the failed Anglo-Irish bank as well as its allied Irish bank. And it'll be pushing up the deficit to a staggering 32% of GDP. It's already up from a worrying 12%.
The Irish banking system has long been a mere shell with no foundations. And that's mostly because of the loans it made into the construction sector. What happened was very simple. Billions were lent, then came a catastrophic collapse in property prices, and many of those loans became worthless. It's this bank, Anglo-Irish, which was the main culprit. It became enormous in the boom years, around half the size of Ireland's entire economy. But in early 2009, it had to be taken over. Only now is the full cost of that nationalisation being made clear. It's expected Anglo-Irish will cost its government up to $46 billion. Combined with the other banks and building societies that needed rescuing, the total bailout bill will be around 30% of the country's total annual output.
In the case of Anglo-Irish Bank and Irish Nationwide Building Society, the state has to downsize these institutions over a period of time to prevent them becoming a systemic threat to the state itself. That's how serious the position that was developed in those banks was. That they developed, and in particular Anglo developed to a size where it was, in effect, its balance sheet, its annual turnover was half the national wealth, and it became in itself a systemic threat to the financial viability of the state. That particular nightmare the government has had to live with, the Irish people have had to live with, and I've had to live with since September 2008. We're now bringing closure to that.
For the Irish taxpayer, that closure can't come quickly enough. Public sector wages have already been slashed by up to 15%, with more austerity measures on the way. Ireland never was irresponsible in the same way Greece was. The government didn't rack up huge debts in the good times, and its statistics were solid. It simply took a massive bet on property prices and lost. Ben Shaw, BBC News.
Okay, let's get more because Megan Greene covers Western European economies for the Economist Intelligence Unit and joins us from our London studios. Megan, welcome to the programme. I guess, look, let's be frank here. These are some staggering sums, and there's certainly a lot more than what Brian Lenihan, of course, the Irish Finance Minister, told us here on the BBC on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. The government's been repeatedly revising its estimates for how much money it will have to throw into its banks since 2008 when this all started. I think originally the government expected Anglo-Irish alone to cost around 5 billion euros. It's so far put almost 23 billion euros into Anglo-Irish Bank, and according to today's announcement, we'll have to finally put in 29 to 34 billion euros. So it's a staggering amount.
Of course, the key question off the back of that, given that we've already heard that they've cancelled or suspended the next two bond auctions, I believe, people out there are going, how in the world is Ireland going to pay for it? Can they afford it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ireland is luckily in a fairly good position in that it has already funded its debt servicing requirements through the middle of next year, and it's sitting on a large sum of cash. So Ireland has some time to figure out how it is going to fund all of this. But the government has estimated that this year the budget deficit will rise to 32% of GDP, which is more conservative than our estimates. We expect it to rise to around 38% of GDP. It's a staggering amount either way, and the largest deficit that any euro area country has ever recorded. So it's massive. And alongside that, the primary deficit will be huge. So we'll see public debt levels absolutely spiking in the next couple of years. And we've already seen investors really skittish towards Irish debt, understandably so. So it remains to be seen when Ireland returns to the debt markets next year, whether it will be able to raise debt on the markets.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting indeed. Just briefly, if you can, we already know second quarter, Ireland took a step back into negative territory. What does this do overall for the Irish economy, do you think, going forward?
Well, so the government has this morning announced that it will have to implement more austerity measures next year. The government had already expected to try to generate 3 billion euros in savings in the budget that it was planning on announcing in December. Now it will have to find some more savings, which will certainly dampen GDP growth looking forward. Ireland's in a different position, though, from other peripheral countries such as Greece and Portugal, in that traditionally its GDP has been completely underpinned by export growth, and we expect that to continue to be the case in the future. So while domestic demand will certainly be hampered by further fiscal austerity measures, export growth won't be hampered as much.
Okay, Megan, great stuff from you. Thanks for joining us. That's Megan Greene from the Economist's Intelligence Unit. Let's move on, because US